Hello, Thrive Tribe. Welcome back to Survive to Thrive Warrior Voices. We have a special guest today. Her name is Chelsea. She is a trauma survivor ambassador. And I'm excited to kind of dig into her story today because her story, her trauma surrounds family, in particular, her father. And I feel that a lot of people suffer with this trauma with family members, and it's just not talked about enough. I feel like it's just now starting to um, show up more. If someone's toxic in your life, it's okay to disconnect from them. But back in the day, like when Chelsea and I were growing up, it was always like you do what you're told, you respect your elders, you respect your parents, and you had to just kind of live it the effect of the way that they treated you. So I am thrilled that she is comfortable enough to share her story with us. Welcome, Chelsea. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Hi.
So excited to have you. So, we've talked a little bit about your journey with your father. And, so the goal today is to kind of talk about family trauma and how it affected you with the trauma coming from your dad out of all people, right? A lot of us are daddy's girls and we look to our dads for really important things in life. And
Mhm.
if your dad was toxic, that could really affect you as an adult. And so I want to dig into that. Let's start off by I want to ask you what motivated you to become a trauma survivor ambassador?
So, like you said, we were raised that you respect your elders. And when it comes to emotions and feelings, you keep it to yourself. If you have a problem with a family member, you basically suck it up and you just move on. You don't bring it up. It's not something that we do. And I have kids of my own and I don't want that for them. I want them to know that it's okay to talk about things and that it's okay if we make you upset, but I want you to communicate that with us so we can fix it and so we can build that good relationship because they're getting older and I don't want them to grow up feeling the way that I ended up feeling.
Yeah. So I mean, what a great lesson that you're teaching your children is, communication because we know the when we stuff things in, especially trauma, it doesn't go away. It just sits there and brews and just it affects you in so many ways. So tell me a little bit about your as a child, like what was your relationship with to start with your mom and dad? Because it wasn't toxic from day one, right?
No,
So,
no.
let's start with that. What was life like with mom and dad and you before the trauma started to happen?
I had a great childhood. I always had a good relationship with both of my parents, especially when I look back at pictures of my dad and I when I was really little. I was textbook daddy's girl. Yes, still have a great relationship with my mom, but there's something about that bond between a dad and a daughter that, you just cling to.
Hmm.
Um, my dad was in the army, and I remember when I was probably 3 or 4, somebody showed up at our front door and served my dad with the paper saying that he was being deployed for Desert Storm.
Mm.
And I remember hiding under the kitchen table and crying and refused to come out because I didn't want him to leave. So that was a huge thing. I didn't want my dad gone. And, everything was fine. He came back and I seen him all the time. We like the same movies, the same books, the same music. So conversations with my dad and I was great, and we share the same sense of humor, which most people don't have that sense of humor, so that was something that we shared is people didn't understand that about us,
Yeah.
but, things were great.
So how long was your dad gone for?
I don't really remember, I remember being under the table, I remember his going away party, and then the time in between him being at us at the going away party and him coming home, I don't really remember a whole lot of that.
Okay.
but I remember that was the last time that he ever left.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So he's back and you guys kind of picked up where you left off. You're a daddy's girl. So then
Mhm.
take us from there. What happened next?
As I got older, he ended up being a truck driver, and for a long time, he was an over the road driver. So he would be gone for weeks on end. And at that time, cell phones, you had the great big car phones,
Mhm.
and they cost money to use. So we didn't really get to talk a whole lot, but I would remember getting postcards from different states, and he would buy me these little souvenir spoons. And so I was collecting them, and I had, spoons from all these different states, and he would send fun postcards that were like, "Oh, hey, look who I found." And it would be some funny character on the front and telling me, what he got to see. And we would have those stories. And then he would work more local. He was gone during the week, but then he would be home on the weekends. And so he was home every weekend. And I think that's kinda where, by that point, I'm a teenager.
Okay.
So I feel like that's kinda where things started to change. I don't remember an exact time or an event, I should say, that things really, clicked, but our relationship started changing a little bit.
So when you're a teenager is when you kind of remember that's when the shift started happening. So he's been on the road and now, and gone for long periods of time.
Mhm.
But he kind of pulled you along with him on that journey by sending you those postcards. And,
Yeah.
that must have made you feel seen and must have made you feel thought of by your
Yeah.
dad. So I could see how that would cause, an incredible bond between the two of
Mhm.
you. So, and you don't need to know exactly when it started, but what started to shift with either you or your dad where things started to go sideways?
Um So I was a dancer, and so I remember, my dad wouldn't come to my dance recitals, and I always kind of chalked it up to, he was at work or he was just getting home, and so he was tired. And doing my choir concerts, he was never at any of those, but he always made sure to show up to my brother's hockey games. And so I kind of noticed there that something wasn't right. But I just kinda, "Oh, well, he was home in time," or he was, things were okay, so it's not a big deal. I had other family there,
That's
and
interesting
then
to
as I
me.
got
That's interesting to me. I just want to point out that it sounds to me like you were justifying his behavior, and
Mhm,
I know it had to have hurt you deeply, especially when he would go to your brother's sports but not yours. And
right,
it's probably because maybe he related more to hockey than he did
mhm,
dance. But
right,
to me, that's also very selfish, especially coming from a
mm,
parent that just because it's not your thing, it's your
mhm,
daughter's thing, and you should be there. But I feel like that's a survivor coping skill is to justify the behaviors
mhm,
of others so the hurt seems less painful. Do you feel like that's kind
right.
of what you were doing now that you look back?
Yeah, at now that I look back at it, absolutely,
Mm,
and, I I didn't realize it at the time because it's not something that I ever learned.
sure.
But I didn't realize that I was doing it, but now that I look back at it, I was making excuses for him to I feel like to protect myself.
Well, to protect yourself, and you didn't want to taint the perfect daddy image that you held on to so dearly,
Right.
right?
Mhm,
Because that's painful. So I'm really sorry that, especially in your teenage years, that is
mhm,
such an awkward, challenging time, especially for a girl, a teenage girl.
mhm,
Our bodies are changing, our hormones are changing, all kinds of things are happening. And it sounds like one of your biggest supporters is starting to let you down.
mhm.
So okay, so go ahead. Like so you started noticing he's going to your brother's sports more than yours and go ahead.
As I got a little bit older, there was another shift. So, I have a great relationship with both of my parents at that time. And it was always, I would go ask my mom, "Hey, can I do this?" And she would say no. Well, then I go and ask my dad, and I started noticing my dad never said no to me,
Mhm.
ever. It was always, "Well, what did your mom say?" "Well, mom said no." He would immediately go and talk to her, and then all of a sudden things were fine. "Yep, you can do it. You can do whatever."
Okay.
And when my mom would go visit friends or anything, there was never a time where my dad said, "No, your mom doesn't want you to leave." It's, "Go ahead. Just whatever you want. Do you need money? Here's money." That kind of thing. And so as a teenage girl, you're going to take advantage of that. So mom says no, I'm going to go to dad because dad doesn't tell me no.
I don't know a teenage girl that wouldn't take advantage of that. I did the same thing,
Yeah.
and I was mostly raised with my dad, and he did the same thing. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what you thought was actually happening then and what you think now was actually happening then.
At the time, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought that Um, my parents were raised differently. My dad was 7 years younger than my mom.
Okay.
So the way my mom was brought up versus the way my dad was brought up were 2 different things because they're different time frames. So I chalked it up to he just wants me to be able to experience my teenage years, have fun. I had great friends, so neither of my parents had any concerns about the friends that I had. But now that I look back on it and after our relationship progressed into the way it did and some of the things that were said, um, it was to keep me away. It was to keep me out of the house, to keep me out of his hair,
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
to keep me happy.
Yeah, and just less that he has to deal with, and that was the same thing
Right.
with my dad. Is like, here's some money, take all your friends to the fair. Come home
Mhm.
tomorrow, kind of thing. Because it was like
Yeah.
less that he had to deal with or worry about, and so I can relate to you on that. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners also can relate to that.
Mhm.
So now that you see that differently, like at some point for me with my dad, it was great that I was getting money thrown at me and just endless amount of freedom, but, it came to a point where that wasn't enough. Like, I needed
Mhm.
him. Like, I needed his love, and, like, that came at a cost. Like, he never said, "How was your day?" "What's going on in your world? What's happening at
Mhm.
school?" And as I got older, I was like, I was kinda missing that. That
Mhm.
sound kinda like what you
Yeah.
went through? Okay.
Yeah. My mom was the one that did that. My mom was "How was your day? How are things going?" And then, my relationship with my dad kinda was an up and down roller coaster my entire life. Things started off real great, and then they would kinda dip a little bit, and then they were great again. Um, the first time I remember ever truly being mad at my dad, I was 16, and he told me that him and my mom were gonna get a divorce. And I grabbed my phone, I called my best friend, and I said, "I'm leaving." I told my mom I was leaving, and she said, "Okay, just be careful." She knew I was upset, and I left. And my dad's first instinct, because I refused to talk to him, he called his sister, I am very close with her, and I'm still close with her to this day because I've always been called her Minnie.
Mm.
We've just had that kind of aunt niece relationship. And so he wanted her to talk some sense into me. And so she called me and I told her how I felt. And I said, "I'm not coming home right now. I'll be home later." When I did come home, I went right in my bedroom, shut the door, did not talk to my dad. They did not end up getting a divorce at that time.
Oh, they didn't. Well, that had to
No.
been I mean, that had to been a horrible, horrible experience at 16. It's like your whole world is falling apart, and,
Hmm.
you're, again, at this prime age of your life when, life is already hard to be a 16-year-old teenage girl, and then to see your home life just kinda explode that way.
Right.
Sounds to me you went right into fight or flight mode and
Yeah.
went to a friend's house where you could express your feelings of hurt and pain or whatever it is that you were feeling. Um, it sounds more like you placed the blame on your dad for the divorce. Was it him that
Mhm,
asked for it? Because you said my dad. Um,
mhm.
so is that kind of where your mind was at the time? Because he told you about the divorce, or
Yeah, I never seen them fight. I never saw them argue.
really?
There was never anything but love. The conversations that went on in the house, everything was fine. It was a typical, there might be disagreements, but I wouldn't call them arguments. So everything seemed fine. And then for there not to be a conversation, it was just a, hey, this is happening.
Wow, that what a
And
shocker.
I feel like my mom knew that wasn't going to go well
Yeah.
because she said, no, go ahead and go.
Well,
And so
because
my mom knew me well enough that
I was just
that's
going to
what
say
I
that
needed.
because she took the time to get to know you on an emotional level. So she knows
Yes.
what really hurts you, what upsets you, what makes you happy. And mom knows those kind of
Yes.
things because she took the time to ask, hey, how was your day? Right.
Mhm.
So you said, okay, so they didn't get a divorce, but eventually they did. Right. And,
Yeah, not until I was an adult and moved out
oh,
is
okay.
when they finally got a divorce.
Okay. So when they got a divorce, where were you and your dad at relationship wise then?
We had a good relationship. I moved 4 hours north, um, and eventually, had a baby and got married, and my dad was driving over the road, and we talked every day. Every day we had a conversation. He would text me, "Hey, how's your day? How are the kids doing? How's life going?" And we would call each other and have endless conversations. And so things were fine.
Okay.
I did had, had the same conversations with my mom, but then it started to shift and the conversations with my dad turned into wanting to discuss the divorce with my mom. And I'm an adult. It does affect me because they're my parents and I love them both. I want them to be happy. I essentially want them together because that's what I want.
Right.
But I'm an adult and we're not splitting time between parents. And I just didn't feel like it was appropriate to discuss your divorce with your daughter,
Sure.
especially when it's your biological parents getting a divorce. I kind of started feeling like he was trying to pull me in one direction and tarnish the relationship that I had with her.
Absolutely.
And I didn't like that.
Yeah, it's never ever healthy for any parent to pull their kids into their messy life, into their messiness.
Mhm.
And that's adult business. And
Mhm.
so good for your mom though for being so in tuned with you, and good for you for saying, "Hey, like this is not appropriate to be talking to me
Mhm.
about that," and seeing it for what it really is. Which had to be disappointing and hurtful as well cuz I'm sure it wasn't
Mhm.
easy to be like, "Dad, this is none of my business. You want to talk about your
Yeah.
divorce, you call mom and talk about it." It had to been hard to do that. So,
Yeah.
all right, so keep going. So that they got a divorce. He was kind of
Yep.
trying to pull you into the middle of it.
Yeah. And the conversations, would start off fine and then somehow they would still always end up with, well, this is happening, this is happening. And I would just say, I'm not talking about it. And he's like, "Well, I'm sure you talk about this with your mom." No, no, we don't. My mom talks about my day. We talk about her day. She asks about her grandkids. We don't discuss the divorce. We discuss what's going on in her personal life as far as work and things like that, but uh, the divorce is not my problem.
Good for
And so
you.
he kind of started pulling back a little bit from then. And then things would get better again. And I remember at my grandmother's funeral, I went down and stayed at my aunt's house, which was his sister-in-law. And my mom stayed the night there, which I give her mad props for doing that because even to this day, I don't know how she was able to do that after everything. But I mean, that's why I look up to my mom.
Right.
And I remember him telling me after she left that he was moving to California. Okay, what's in California? Well, I met somebody on the internet. Okay, I don't have a lot of room to talk because I met my husband on the internet.
Hey, lots of people. I met my
You
husband on
know,
Facebook, so
yeah. So I didn't have a lot of room to talk. The only difference was I, talked with my husband for 4 years before we met in person. And then we had met in person and did that multiple times. He literally met her online and decided, "Hey, I'm flying out to California and I'm going to move in with her."
wow.
Okay, when are you doing this? Oh, I leave in a week. So my mom's mom just passed away. I live 4 hours from you and you're going to say, "Hey, by the way."
Yeah.
I was a little hurt by that.
Well, sure, because that's a huge move, and that's a huge, yeah. I mean, that's a complete opposite side of the world from where we're at, in
Yeah,
Michigan. Okay,
yeah. Um, and so he moved out there and I would still talk to him on a regular basis. And I, obviously didn't get to meet her, but I did have conversations with her on the phone and she seemed great. My dad seemed happy. And I said, "Listen, that's all I want. I want for my mom and dad to be happy. And if they're not happy together, I want them to be happy separate. So that's okay. I support that. If she makes you happy, that's all I can ask for."
right,
And, there were plans of, "Hey, we want you and Matt and the kids to come out to California and we want to take the kids to Disneyland and we want to show you around." And yeah, that would be great. He's like, "I'll help fund the tickets and everything." Okay, because that would be helpful when you've got two young parents and two very young children. My kids were 2 and 4 at the time.
right,
So that's a lot of negotiating and figuring out and planning, and there's a lot that goes into that.
sure,
So, there were plans. There were great plans, and there were plans to bring her back to visit and to meet us. And, I was excited at the time. And then it all went downhill after that. And when I say it went downhill, it wasn't a gradual downhill. It was a final destination, you're on a roller coaster, you go over the hill and there's no track and you just crash.
really.
It was instant and it was messy and it only got worse after that.
So, what's about the dynamic changed so drastically?
I honestly still to this day don't know, and that's one of the things that I have struggled with is I don't know what happened. I remember being on the phone having a normal conversation with my dad, and I could hear her in the background. And I'm like, "What's going on?" And she said some choice words and called me a whore.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, "Wait, what just happened? Is she talking to me?" And she obviously could hear me because she said, "Yes, I'm talking to you." I said, "Are you going to just let her talk to me like that?" And his response was, "If the shoe fits, wear it," and hung up the
Oh my
phone.
gosh. And he hung up.
And he hung up.
Wow. And that was just out of
And
the
then would
blue.
not answer my calls. Out of the blue, hung up, would not answer my calls. I kept trying to call back, would not answer my calls.
So, your dad that you've looked up to your entire life that fought in a war now is not even fighting for the bare minimum respect for his daughter.
Right.
That had to be painful. And that is something that I feel with the relationship you had with your dad. Um, Anyone that had a close relationship with their dad, that would have been just soul crushing, soul
Yes.
crushing. Um,
That broke me to my core.
yeah, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. So it sounds like maybe at the start of their relationship, she was great. Oh, I want to get to know the kids and we'll do this and do that. And then she got her claws in him, maybe,
Mhm.
and started, changing his views, thoughts, where maybe she wanted him all to herself.
Yes.
So what happened after that?
So I kept trying to reach out wasn't getting any answers. Um, and I get a text message and it says, "Can I call Michael for his birthday?" Michael is my oldest. He was turning 5.
This is from your dad?
This is from my dad.
Okay.
Out of the blue, not answering my calls, get a random text message. And I was still very hurt. And you didn't want to have a conversation when I wanted the conversation. So right now, we're not going to have one.
Mhm.
So I responded and I said, "You can absolutely call him. I will put you on speakerphone so you can talk to him, but we don't need to have a conversation."
Wow, I mean, good for you because it would have been so easy to say no. You don't want to be a part of my life. You don't get to be a
Mhm.
part of my kid's life, and that just to me tells me how wonderful of a mother you are. That you put your relationship aside to let the kids talk to their grandpa because I'm sure with your
Mhm.
experience of not wanting to be put in the middle of things that you choose to not put your children into the middle of adult
Right.
business. So they have no
Mhm.
idea what's going on
No.
with grandpa and his new fling.
Nope. Nope.
So good for you for still allowing that conversation to happen, regardless of what was going on between you and your dad.
Yeah, that was very hard to do, and the whole time I'm doing it, I can feel my body shaking.
Oh, sure.
And I'm trying to hold the emotions back because I don't want my kids to see my reaction. That's not, you know, I had a great relationship with my grandparents. I wanted that for my kids.
Okay.
Just because I'm having an issue with somebody, when I was growing up, if I had a problem with one of my family members, it was, you have to talk to them. You have to give them a hug. You have to tell them you love them. You have to do this. You have. No, I don't have to, and neither do my kids. And my kids are very little, but I still want them to have the choice.
Sure. Hmm.
I want them to have their own vision of people. And so I never told my kids what was going on, and I would never talk to my mom or my husband when the kids were around discussing my dad.
Good for
I
you.
didn't want that to tinge their relationship that they had or the vision that they had of their grandparents
Good
at
for you.
all.
That takes a lot of strength for you to do that. So eventually, after that call, then did you and your dad reconnect or not?
No, because that's where the crash happened.
Mm,
Um, and you would think with me telling you that he hung up on me and wouldn't defend me that was like hey, that's the crash. No, that's the at your top of the hill and you're going over and you see there's no track. He called and I didn't even say hello. I turned it on, I put it on speakerphone like I said I would, and I handed the phone to my son. And the first words out of his mouth are, "Your mom is a effing bitch." Talking about me
to your children?
to my 5-year-old.
Oh yeah, that's going over the hill with no track for sure.
And I didn't respond. My son responded. My 5-year-old son responded, and he didn't respond with words. There was a picture in a frame on our TV stand that was a picture of my dad, Michael, and my son, Austin, together, just the 3 of them. My son handed me my phone, walked over to the TV, grabbed the picture frame, and smashed it glass side down
Wow.
and said, "I'm not talking to him," and walked away.
Wow.
Ended the call. I didn't acknowledge anything happened. I ended the call. I put my phone down, and that was it.
When you say that
And
was
then
it, that do you mean like you're done with this relationship with your father?
at the time, I wouldn't say that I was done. I was done in that moment.
Okay.
I needed time to cool down and I needed to tend to my 5-year-old who just heard his grandfather say something like that
About his
on the
mom.
phone
Yeah.
about me.
Wow.
And at the time, I thought he was talking about my mom and going back to the whole divorce thing. but he was talking about me, and my child was not okay with that. And he looked right at me and he said, "I want nothing to do with him."
That's some strong emotions from a 5-year-old, but man,
Yeah.
he loves his
And I
mama.
said, I said, "We will come back to this. Right now we're talking with,
Mhm.
our head, and we're talking with our emotions right now. So we're going to come back to this once things have calmed down a little bit." And we never talked. We went 4 years with 0 conversation, no text messages, no nothing after that.
Oh,
And that was with me trying to reach out to have a conversation.
oh, so now he's ignoring you.
Now he's ignoring me.
So it sounds to me like, I don't know what was going on with him, but because like when he was trying to talk to you about his divorce with your mom, and because you weren't responding in the way that he thought you should, that you weren't possibly taking his side, that
Right.
when he made this choice to go to California, um, you know, it was like he's just done with you because you didn't act the way he wanted you to, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
that had to have been devastating, for you to have your daddy that you have looked up to do that. So, but good for you though that you stood your ground as well, and you weren't
Mhm.
begging for him to come back, or that you weren't apologizing for things that you didn't do,
Mhm.
or owning anything that wasn't yours to own. Because that's really hard too, because we tend to do that, especially like through trauma, um, in dysfunctional love. We will try to get that person that's not giving us the love that we want to give us that love we want by doing all of those things, being someone that we're
Mhm.
not, allowing poor behavior toward us and others that we love. So good for you for not allowing that and not begging for him to be back in your life when you knew he was toxic, not just for you, but for your
Mhm.
family as well. So
Yeah.
after 4 years, let's talk about that, and then I really wanna talk about, um, how this has affected you as an adult, and like, how you got through all of this with a level head. Because so far, it sounds to me like, you're going through some of the darkest times of your life and the most painful things of your life, but yet you still stayed so level headed, like with your children and everything. So after 4 years, what happened then? How did you guys reconnect?
We spoke one time, and it started off as, I wouldn't say a good conversation, because I don't feel like our conversation was going to be good after everything that happened. There's a lot of animosity. There's a lot of things that were said and things that weren't said that I wanted to say.
Sure.
Um, so we were talking, and I was trying to keep a level head, but I had so many years of anger built up. And the conversation started off okay. And then it was, "Well, you didn't join the army. You didn't go into the medical field like I wanted you to, because that's what I did when I was in the army. I never wanted you."
He said those words to you?
Yes. That was the last time that I talked to him, until we didn't have a relationship for 10 years. So for probably 4 years after that, I never talked to him. And then I got a call from him, and something made me answer. So I answered, and he had told me that he was in the hospital. He had had a heart attack. And I said, "Okay, well, I want to talk. The kids want to talk to you." They never verbalized that they wanted to talk to you, but I was trying to mend the relationship that he broke with them.
Okay.
And he said, "When I'm released from the hospital, I'll call you and we will talk, and then we can bring the kids into the conversation." I said, "Okay." I never heard from him again. Fast forward to 20, let's see, 2021, I get a phone call. My mom gets a phone call from my brother. Um, and the relationship with my dad ruined a lot of relationships for me. His family would bash me on Facebook. My brother would bash me. So my brother called my mom and he says, "Hey, uh, dad's back in Michigan, but he's in the ICU on life support." And at this time, I'm in nursing school and I'm working full time and I'm raising 3 kids now. So he didn't even know, well, four kids if you include my stepson Aiden, who is essentially my child. And my youngest, he knew nothing about. So we dropped everything and we made the 4-hour drive and I sat at his bedside. He had had what I found out was heart attack number 5.
Wow.
And my dad was only in his mid 50s. I knew he wasn't healthy. I knew he had some things going on. And I sat next to his bed and I just talked to him like nothing had ever happened, but he couldn't respond. Um, my brother and I had made a really hard decision that we were not going to let them resuscitate him if something happened while he's on the machine. And his sister had come up to the hospital and we had talked to his doctor and to his cardiologist. And I hear what they're saying, and she's hearing what she wants to hear. And I had said, okay, this is what's going to happen. I'm going home to figure out what I need to do to be prepared for what's going to happen. You can figure it out, and I'll be back.
Hmm.
I got 10 minutes down the road, and she calls me saying, he coded, they need you to tell them that they can do CPR because you're the next of kin because he never got married.
Okay.
And I said no. And that was it. And so I had lost my dad once because we went 10 years with this broken relationship. And I had come to terms with the fact we weren't going to have a relationship. I could not force him to have a relationship that he didn't want. But now I'm losing my dad all over again.
Right. I said this to you before when it is so difficult to lose any loved one. Um, but I think there's an extra level of pain that comes with someone that you lose but are still here. That meaning they
Mhm.
haven't passed away. And so to have your dad around, so to speak, but not be able to have that relationship had to be excruciating for you.
Yes.
And then to be called when he's on his deathbed, essentially.
Mhm.
And I can't imagine the trauma and the pressure that was put on you as being next of kin to make that choice of do not resuscitate. And, I understand you and your brother made that together, which I'm glad that you were able to do that so you didn't have to hold the
Mhm.
weight of that by yourself. But naturally, I feel um, like where was your mindset after that? Did you go through the regrets of like, oh, I wish I would have tried to have a relationship? I wish, what if, what if? Did you go through that?
Yeah, I went through that and it was awful.
Yeah.
Um for the first couple years after he passed, there was still constant regret. Not regret that I didn't try because I had tried for a very long time, but regret that I didn't try harder
Well,
and regret that I just didn't have the conversation when he was finally ready to do it,
but was
even
he
though I
really ready
knew
to
I
do it?
wasn't ready for that.
Yeah, but was he really ready? Because it sounded to me like he came to you twice and then he blew it.
Mm. Yeah.
Absolutely blew it by bad talking to your child about you. And then the second time was he talked long enough to say, you're not good enough. You didn't do what I wanted you to do in life. And oh, by the way, I didn't want you. So when you say, like, oh, I get so passionate about this because, like, I'm fuming on the inside for you because I know so many people out there grow through this family trauma and then have to keep that deep, having to keep that shoved down for this, for everybody else's comfort is mind blowing to me. But you said, I felt like I didn't try hard enough. Try what hard enough to have a healthy relationship with an abuser? Because he was
Mhm.
abusing you mentally and emotionally,
Right.
abusing you. So does that make sense? Like when I say that out loud, Chelsea, you were regretting not trying harder to have a healthy relationship with your abuser,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, now that I look back on it, I felt like yeah, I feel like I was that little girl again that
Yeah.
was clinging to the relationship that I did have at one point and just trying to make it my fault because that's what I was used to. I was used to being, with our relationship, everything was my fault. Nothing was his fault. And so he's not here to do that. So now I'm going to do it to myself. And that's not okay. That's not what I need to be doing. I did what I I tried. I tried and tried and tried. That's not my fault. And so at some point I did finally come to terms with I did try. I didn't fail. I tried and then I decided to choose me. But then when he passed away, it was that little girl inside of me that wanted so much more than what I got. And now I was never going to get that and I was never going to get answers.
Right. And I think that that's absolutely to be expected, that you are going to grieve what you wish could have happened or what you felt should have happened, or you grieve the father that you knew as a little girl.
Mhm.
And I don't know what happened in his lifetime to go from that dad that you idolized and daily conversations and all of those things to the dad that he turned out to be in your adult age that could be so soul crushing to you and to your children.
Mhm.
And that my heart hurts for you because I just feel like it's like a double whammy. So you lost him when he was still around, and then you lost him when he passed. But
Mhm.
you weren't just grieving that, you were grieving the man he used to be and grieving
Mhm.
that, and also grieving that your children lost a grandparent. And that was probably one of their first losses that they've ever experienced in life, as far as a very close family member. But
Yeah.
so now you're looking back, because that was only like 4 years ago. And I know that this is rather new for you to talk about this family trauma because you have been holding it in.
Mhm.
And so, as a trauma survivor ambassador, everything that you've gone through, what would you say to other trauma survivors that are dealing with family trauma like yours? What have you learned that you want to share with them in hopes that they don't have to go through all that unnecessary pain that we bring upon ourselves with going down the rabbit holes of regret and the would have, could have, should haves? What advice do you have for them?
It's okay to put you first. Just because they're family does not mean you need them. You do not need them. Family, whether it's blood family or your chosen family, your friends that become family, you need to put you first. And it's okay if you have a negative relationship with a family member to say, this is not okay. I will not do this anymore. I need to do this for me. Start with putting them at arm's length. Do not entertain those negative conversations and don't let them control your thoughts.
Mm,
His relationship that he created with me controlled my thoughts for years. it, put a strain on my relationship with my husband. It put a strain on my relationship with my kids because I let it weigh me down. It's okay to have boundaries. And just because we were not raised saying that boundaries were okay does not mean that that's true. Boundaries are absolutely 100% okay,
Yeah.
and they need to happen.
Well, and that's the thing is a lot of us, like, in our age, I keep saying that, in our young age, by the way, um, we weren't taught boundaries. And so we feel guilty when we start to set them. And I agree with you, totally agree with you that I just simply say you never need to be in a relationship that is toxic, no matter who that person is. If they are
Mhm,
toxic to you, you only get one life. And you
mhm.
have the opportunity to fill your entire circle, your life with the people that you choose to have in there. You have that power to do that. But to do that sometimes means letting go of the ones that are not bringing you any value into your
Yes.
life. If they're just taking out more than they're giving, then they're, then they're toxic for you, and it causes trauma. And
Mhm.
so I love the advice that you're giving, and telling us to disconnect from anyone, whether family or not, that is toxic, that's controlling our thoughts and our mind. And how did you get from being down those rabbit holes after he passed, and the what ifs and the grieving, the relationship you wish you would have had, to where you're at now, to be able to sit here on a podcast, as a strong, confident, beautiful mother, friend, wife, all the things. How did you get from that point to where you're at now?
It is it's very new. Um, just within the last few months, I'm graduating college with a healthcare administration degree. I
Congratulations.
have a grandson. My kids are getting older. My oldest is graduating this year. I'm ready to live for me, and I'm ready to not, I still grieve my dad. I still have my moments, not as frequent, but I'm ready to be happy. I'm ready to choose me. I'm ready to be proud of where I've come from surviving that relationship and being able to talk about it. This is the first time that, aside from my very close circle, the first time I've really talked about what happened. And for me, this is the first step in truly being able to move on from it. And what I'm taking out of it is I want to help somebody so they don't put themselves through the torture that I put myself through.
Yeah,
I put myself through so much unnecessary hurt, and I don't want that for anybody else. I want to help people. I want them to know that there's somebody that understands them and that's here. And I want to see other people succeed and be able to move on.
that's really powerful stuff. And I hope that you talking out loud to me is, sometimes I feel like when we start to let these things out that we have pushed down for so long, it's almost like letting out that dirty little secret
Mhm,
that we've been holding on to for so long. And when we do that, it's so freeing. It's so freeing.
mhm,
Um, and so with you just like starting to come out and talk about these kind of things, I really hope that you find healing. And every time you tell your story, because that is that's part of the mission of this trauma survivor ambassador program, is for the ambassadors as well to find healing. Because the more you
mhm,
talk about your trauma, the more you're taking your power back, and um, the more you heal. And then when you help other people with the story, with the journey that you went through, with the trauma that you went through, it's like it kind of makes you feel like, okay, I didn't go through all of that for nothing. that I'm
Right.
able to take my story and do something good with it, turning that pain
Mhm.
into purpose, which I say that a lot. But I also, you said something a little bit ago, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but it brought up the thought of like limited beliefs. So a lot of like when, it comes to family members, like again, we're told they're family, you got to put up with it. It's the only mother you're going to have. It's the only father you're going to have. It's, your siblings. Um, those to me are limited beliefs. Those are the beliefs of the person that's telling you that. And if by believing that, whatever is being told to you is holding you back, meaning it's putting you in a toxic environment, you get to change that rule.
Mhm.
You can make that rule is from it's my dad, so I have to put up with it, to I don't care who it is, I'm not going to tolerate being treated this way. Like
Mhm.
you have the power to change those rules. And again, these rules are put on us by parents and teachers. And, it's even society. Society teaches
Mhm.
us rules. That tries to. But you gotta be like me and be rebellious as hell and go, "No, that might be your rule and it might work for you, but this is my life, and I'm gonna break those rules because they don't work for me." And
Mhm.
it sounds to me like you're really coming to terms with that and really coming to terms with, um, accepting the relationship with your father for what it was, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because here's the thing. Unfortunately, you can never go back and you can't change any of it. And even if he was here today and you guys were able to work on your relationship, that pain would always still be there. It wouldn't have erased the harmful, impactful things that he said and did to you. It would have never erased that. But with him gone, it's not going to continue, right?
Mhm.
So now is like, to me, when someone in your situation makes a decision and says, okay, I accept it for what it is. I will hold on to the good, all the
Mhm.
times my dad was there for me, and I'm going to choose to let go of those bad times because maybe you don't know. You even said at the very beginning, you don't know. You don't know what
Mhm.
caused it. So accept the fact I don't know what happened to my dad, but something terrible did. And it messed him up mentally and emotionally enough that he started treating me poorly. And find compassion in that. And when you can find compassion in any situation like that, it's easier to move on from. And I'm not saying you have to forgive them or anything, because
Mhm.
it's not that I don't believe in forgiveness. I'm a very forgiving person. I don't hold grudges or anything. But there are certain people in my life that I haven't forgiven because I don't need to. How they treated me and stuff, does it still affect me? Absolutely not. Because I healed from it. I don't need to forgive somebody to heal from something. And it drives me crazy when people say, well, you have to forgive so you can move on. Oh, no, no. Again, I'm breaking the rules. That's your rule. My rule is I can move on from my pain once I do the work to heal myself. I don't have to forgive anybody. I don't have to make up with anybody. I don't have to do any of that, you know? So
Mhm.
I really appreciate you sharing such a new, vulnerable story with us, because he just passed 4 years ago.
Mhm.
And, grief, as you know, comes in waves, right? And today, you telling your story, I'm hoping when we're done, you're going to feel like you'll be able to stand tall and say, I did it. I finally did it. I said it out loud. The whole world knows. Um, but next week, it might hit you and you'll be like, oh, I miss my dad and being daddy's girl. And that's okay.
Mhm.
But you're going to feel different this time when it hits you, because you're not living at the effect of it, that you've taken control and you're like, this is my story and I'm going to help other people with it. And you're also teaching your children such a valuable lesson here, and teaching them that it's okay to talk about your pain. It's okay to talk when somebody hurts you. Even if mom or dad or anybody hurt your feelings or makes you feel bad inside, it's okay to talk about it. Like, what a
Mhm.
great lesson that you're teaching your children. And you said you had a grandchild, so they're going to be able to
Mhm.
teach their grandchild that. And I know you said you still have a great relationship with your mother,
Mhm.
and and that's incredible. And hold on to that, and always remember she was the one that was there for your dance and for your emotional needs, right? And that
Yes.
is huge. And I mean, it's just huge.
Mhm.
And so good for her for never wavering. At least she gave you that one parent that never wavered their love for you no matter what. And so I'm
Mhm.
glad that you still have that. And
Me too.
maybe that's something that you hold on to during the hard times. So I guess that my last question I typically ask everybody is there anything last minute that you want to add to anyone that's listening? Any piece of advice that maybe somebody gave you that you felt really helped you, or just anything that a tool that maybe you use to help you get from where you were to now telling your story. Do you have anything you want to share with other trauma survivors?
It's okay to feel the hurt, just don't live there. It
Mm,
does not live rent free in your head. It does not live rent free in your heart. You set your own rules, you set your boundaries, and you stick with them no matter who it hurts. Because if it's hurting you, that's just as bad as if it hurts somebody else.
that's so powerful. Yeah, and if it's hurting you, it's hurting everybody around you. Because
Mhm.
when you're going through something, it spills over to everyone around you. So I think that that's an incredible piece of advice, and it's not even just okay to feel it. It's like it's necessary. You have to feel things to heal from them.
Mhm.
And if you catch yourself stuffing things down, you need to catch yourself and be like, oh no, that's not the way to handle this. Like, I need to talk about it. I need to feel it, whether I need to sit and cry or, take a time out for 2 days and just decompress, you know, unplug myself from social media and just you do you kind of thing. That we
Mhm.
need we need to give people permission, and they need to give themselves permissions to just be and feel what they're feeling, because you know what? It takes more energy to fight that feeling than it does to just feel it and heal from it and then let it go past, right? Because if you
Yep.
don't process it, it's always there. You trust me,
Mhm.
eventually you're gonna have to process it. So you might as well do it right on set. Save yourself all
Yes.
kinds of time. But all right, Chelsea, thank you again so much for being so brave and bringing us along with you on this journey, and sharing such a raw story with us. And again, like I said, I think so many people out there are dealing with toxic family members. And I hope
Mhm.
that they find that your story is inspiring and knowing that there is healing after. And your father passed away even. And so I feel like you potentially could help so many people. And so, to my Thrive Tribe, thank you for tuning in for this episode, to hear Chelsea's story. Please, please share, subscribe, like, to help us get her story out there, because, again, so many people are suffering at the hands of toxic relationships, of family members, ones that we feel like we are victim to and we don't have a right to do what's right for us. So please help us get her story out by sharing this, so we can bring some inspiration and hope to them. So thanks again for being here with us. We will talk to
Thank
you
you.
soon. Thank you, Chelsea. Bye bye.
Bye.